I didn't have it all figured out, but I knew that it was okay, because what do we do as researchers? We find things out. It's just taking that next step.
Hello there, I'm Sarah McCluskey and this is Research Adjacent. Each episode I talk to amazing research adjacent professionals about what they do and why it makes a difference. Keep listening to find out why we think the research adjacent space is where the real magic happens. In this episode I'm talking to Naomi Tyrrell. Naomi is an independent research consultant. Through her business Research Your Way, she does bespoke research and evaluation, particularly for charities and social enterprises. After finding it impossible to balance academia and parenting, she stepped, tentatively at first, into self-employment. 5 years later, her business now has clients all over the globe, and Naomi gets a huge kick out of seeing the impact that her work has out in the real world. Her journey also inspired her to set up the Alt-Ac Facebook group for people exploring career opportunities outside of academia, and she is now passionate about helping researchers to see how valuable their skills are to a wide range of vocations. Listen on to hear about how she has found freedom and fulfilment in the research adjacent world. Welcome to the podcast, Naomi. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be with you.
And could you tell us a bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I left an academic role in 2019 to set up my own research and evaluation business. So it's called Research Your Way, and we provide research, evaluation, impact, done for you services, and also training to charities, CICs, social enterprises. Firstly, it was in the Southwest where I'm based, and then across the country when COVID hit and lots of us went online for all sorts of things. And now we've got clients all over the world, and the business has just grown. And now we're also doing training and running workshops and delivering coaching in universities as well.
Excellent. I love to meet other research adjacent freelancers like me, but I also find it fascinating the range of different types of companies that there are out there that are supporting the work that goes on in the research environment. So what made you choose this path? What's your journey? How did you get here?
So the thing that made me always want to be an academic was wanting to make a difference, which I think is quite common for people who do PhD, postdoc, get an academic post, and then increasingly thinking what I wanted to do and put out there into the world was getting squeezed more and more because of how academia was going and the demands on our time. An awful lot of admin might resonate with people listening. And I thought, actually, I love research and I really want to feel like what I'm doing is making a difference, even if it's just in a contained way, and in a way that doesn't kind of operate on glacial timescales and isn't all about, in 18 months' time, you might have a paper in a journal that somebody might read at some point, or even cite if you're lucky. So immediately after my PhD, I actually worked in a commercial research company, which made me realise actually the skills that we have as academic researchers are really valued if we market them in the right way and if we think about how they might be applicable beyond academia. So I had that role and then was fortunate enough to get a postdoc. So I moved to Ireland to UCC to do my postdoc, and then carried on a kind of the traditional academic trajectory, permanent role, securing research grants, publications, etc. And then after my second child was born, I just thought I can't see how an academic career in the traditional sense is going to fit with my life beyond academia. And I thought actually there probably are other options, and I began to review them and did a skills audit and had coaching and thought, yeah, okay, I know that these skills and my knowledge and experience is valuable beyond academia. Do I really just want to swap though and go into employment in a research company or a charity or an organisation, use those skills, government even? And I thought, not really. I love having freedom and independence. So the only way I'm probably going to be able to secure exactly what I want that's going to fit in with the rest of my life is to set up a business. So I started slowly, went self-employed, part-time from home. And then the business has grown. I still try very hard to work part-time so that I can maximise time with my family. and we became a limited company and have now research associates and an employee alongside me as we have grown to serve the needs of our clients.
What a fantastic story of just taking things like a little step at a time and a step at a time and just figuring out what really was the best scenario for you. It sounds like when you did all that kind of personal development work, that was really important to you to figure out what was the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think after I had my first child, I had coaching when I went back into academia, and that was just transformative for me. And it really kind of brought me back to what my values are. And really insightful questions that the coach asked that really helped me to think about what I wanted to do, what I could do, and to think about, the wider context, really, just not my academic career. So I think when you're in academia and you're surrounded by academics, it becomes all about the next step and the next step and the next step, rather than really assessing, where am I right now? What do I like about it? What do I not like? What would I change if I could? What are the other possibilities? So that was really, really helpful. And it wasn't a snap decision. It was a process. And I didn't have it all figured out. Even, when I emailed my resignation letter, I didn't have it all figured out. But I knew that it was okay, because what do we do as researchers? We find things out. So, if people are kind of thinking, oh, I have to have it figured out, or I have to minimize the risk, it's like actually just the next step. That's all it takes. And we're the same in academia. It's like, oh, you might apply for a promotion or apply for a grant or submit a paper. It's just taking that next step. You don't have to have everything figured out. And, if people are listening kind of thinking, oh, what else can I do? There are so many possibilities, and the first step, I think, is just talking to other people who are doing other things. And then you become aware of the possibilities. And I think that's what's so amazing, thinking about, doing a skills audit or assessing where you're at and whether it aligns with who you are and what you want to be putting out there in the world. And then exploring, if that comes back as, no, actually, I'm not in the right place, exploring what those possibilities are through building relationships with people who are doing other things. And there's loads of researchers out there doing amazing things, using their research skills in academia, beyond academia, in research adjacent roles in universities and other organisations. And there's, really huge network out there of people supporting and helping each other, which is really lovely. And I've seen that grow and grow in the last 5 years since I left academia, of, a really big supportive community now, giving advice, sometimes paid for, sometimes free, but just a lot more talked about, that we can do other things as researchers. You don't have to stay within academia if academia doesn't suit you anymore.
Yeah, I love that. What you said, that's what researchers do. They like find things out and figure things out. That's just so much at the heart of what it means to be a researcher. I think that's a really important point. But you said there about you've really found there's a supportive community there. Where do you find your community? Are there particular places you find, places or people or events or things like that you found really helpful?
Yeah, so in COVID, I set up a Facebook group called LTAC Careers, because I found that quite a lot of the support was North American focused, and it is slightly different because of tenure track and the different context. So I, saw people posting on Twitter, as it was then, on X and LinkedIn and Facebook, and thinking it doesn't quite seem to kind of match where I'm at, and the discussion is helpful, but it's not quite the same actually in the UK and Europe. So I set up a Facebook group just inviting people I knew who were still in academia and I knew were thinking of leaving, or in academia wanted to carry on but might be able to signpost other people, students or staff, to the group. And we just grew and grew. And I think, the pandemic particularly, we've had all the discussion about, quiet quitting and now loud quitting, and all the kind of media discourse around people wanting to change jobs and seeking fulfillment. And it kind of was on that crest of a wave, really. And we had, lots of people join. We've got about 2,500 members now just in that group. And then there's other Facebook groups as well. There's LinkedIn groups and chats. There's still people posting on X about, moving out of academia, what you can do with your research skills. And I think, the pandemic was a strange time, I think, for a lot of people, and that sense of reaching out and not feeling isolated and being able to do that through social media mechanisms was really important for a lot of people, and people investing time even if they're not in real life relationships, just time in those virtual relationships and supporting each other. And that's kind of carried on really with the Facebook group that I run, and I've seen that in other Facebook groups as well, of people supporting each other and giving advice. And also people kind of sometimes point out roles for other people. You kind of get to know what people are looking for, and then you post jobs and or people might be hiring themselves and they post those. So yeah, there's a lot more support out there now, and a lot more conversation, I think, around how we can harness our skills. And there is an element of selling and branding our skills as researchers beyond universities, and why that is actually really, really important. Because the other thing that I've noticed is there are people out there doing research adjacent roles, but without necessarily having the same level of training or level of knowledge as a lot of people like us may and do have. So, I think it's really interesting to kind of think about, if we're hesitant because of our training to talk about what we know and how we can help, actually others come into that space. It's not that it doesn't happen, it's not needed. There's huge demand for the kind of work that I do. And if I'm not confident and going out there and saying we can do this and we can do this, and this is why it's really important actually to do it in this way, others come in and fill the gap, and the end product isn't actually as useful or as valuable for the client as it would be if we had highly skilled, highly trained people delivering that service.
I certainly personally really resonate with that. As one of the reasons that I felt I could go freelance was because the people that we were sometimes hiring to work with us, when you just think I could do better than that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in academia, it's like we never know enough, we're never good enough. It's always about the next thing. And actually, if we just stop and take stock and do that skills audit or that knowledge audit and think, wow, let's just recognize out of the general working population where we're at with our skill set and our knowledge base. And, that has huge value to organizations beyond universities, huge value. So, sometimes people are really humble, and I get why, or they're really lacking in confidence, and I get why, but I would just encourage you to reach out to people who have, been on this path for a bit longer, who can support you and can encourage you to really see where you have value. And I think if you can bring that confidence and knowledge of your value to the organizations who need your skills and knowledge, it's like the perfect match. It's not about starting again. It's not about retraining. It's about recognizing your value in a marketplace beyond the traditional academic university setting.
Yeah, and I think, as you said about these online communities, how valuable they can be for people who are perhaps in that situation. Because if you're in a role where everybody that's around you is really only thinking about the academic path, or you are maybe in a position where you're kind of isolated, you don't know anybody who does these kind of jobs, it gives you somewhere to go and find out a bit more and find a bit of community.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot easier to do that now. We do have the online supportive spaces to do that. People are blogging, people YouTube videos, there's a lot more information now. I would say it's important to be discerning. I posted about this on LinkedIn recently, like it's important to be discerning, but we have the skills as researchers. We know, like, treat it like an experiment. We know the framework for finding out new things. And if you kind of treat it like an experiment and can think about it in an exciting way, then I think it kind of propels you that bit further towards where you want to be, rather than being in this deficit model of, well, the only thing I can do is, just being a bit more exploratory around the possibilities, and talking to others can be so helpful for inspiration.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So I wonder if, you've mentioned a bit about the kind of work that you do with your company. I wonder if maybe you could give us a couple of specific examples of things that you've done just to help people understand what you mean by, research consultancy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a social scientist by background. My area of research was family migration, but I do very little family migration research and evaluation. And there comes a point where you kind of have to make a choice, because you have to market yourself and your company. So I went into the kind of bespoke research and evaluation services. So we're talking about questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, participatory methods, photography, walking methods, kind of thinking about what social scientists might do in a research project, what I had done in my own research projects, but thinking about how you can tailor them to the needs of charities, social enterprises, and at that point it was mainly in the UK. So we didn't kind of go with the startups because often their funding is really, really limited. We kind of went for that middle range level of organisations and charities and CICs. And to be honest, I didn't do a huge amount of marketing because I knew that it had to be part-time, had to fit in with my family. And I knew that I was Southwest limited because I didn't want to have to stay overnight and leave my kids. So that would kind of, my life framework set up the framework for the business. But we grew through personal recommendation and referral. I've only recently started thinking, okay, what is my proper marketing strategy? It's just amazing when you go out and you tell people what you're doing, you never know who other people know, and you never know who might need your service. So yeah, it's, we are an example of having grown through referral, word of mouth, and growing a network of people who may need our services at that point or know people who do. And then once it doesn't take long, just, to build your client base, you get your testimonials, you do a good job. That's always really, really important. And then you get repeat business. So if you want to kind of go it alone in this kind of work, you don't need that many clients actually to create a viable business. And if you want to grow, as we have done, then you can grow through referral and repeat business. And, I think sometimes people think, bigger is better. And for me, it's about developing and growing a manageable business that still fits in with my life, because otherwise I might as well go and be employed and back in a university. It's very much for me about getting the right balance and also working with the right clients. So if you, again, thinking about that skills match with organisations who value them, in the social research and evaluation space, it's about matching what you offer to the clients who are going to appreciate its value. So we do everything bespoke. We're not off the peg. We do differentiate from the massive companies who do what we do by having a really good personal relationship with our clients, where we know their organisation and they know that we care about what they're doing in communities, because often it's CICs and charities really trying to make a difference on a really limited budget. And we care about what they're trying to deliver for their service users and their clients. They know that, and they know that we would do a good job for them. Even, there would be something that we can do with a very small budget. There will be a lot more we can do with a bigger budget, but we won't say no to them just on the basis of their budget.
And I imagine that helps to really build that trust factor as well, that helps with growing the business.
Yeah, I think it's essential. I think, whether you're delivering training or whether you're delivering a bespoke program of evaluation, they can speak honestly with us about their struggles and about what they need to show to their grant funders. And we can say to them, okay, we could do that, but I think this is probably going to be better for us to be able to show what you need to show to your funders. Or actually, yeah, we could do a survey, but it's highly unlikely that, given the category of service user we're talking about, we're going to get a good response rate. So I'm not going to waste your money by designing some fancy survey when we might only get a very small response rate. And it's those kind of conversations, honest conversations about what you can deliver for your client and not wasting their time or their money, that I think has helped us to grow.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm sure that given these kinds of projects that you work on, there's maybe one or two examples of things that you're really proud of that you'd like to share with us.
I actually love all my clients, but I laugh in the Facebook group because I say my only goal was to work with nice people. That was my one goal when I left academia, which I'm not sure what that says, and we won't talk about that context, but that was my goal. And when you have a simple goal, it's quite easy to achieve. Yeah. So I do love all my clients. I love the projects and the work that they're doing, because they're social purpose organisations. Even the clients that might be bigger, we're often working with their social purpose divisions. So everything is about trying to make society better, trying to make people's lives better, and that is hugely rewarding. And we can, I'm working on a evaluation report at the moment for a client I've worked with for 3 years. It's infant feeding, support services in a small town in Devon. They have exploded in the last 3 years as statutory services have shrunk. They're funded by the National Lottery. I look at all of their data and interview their clients and their partners. And it's just amazing to see the difference that this small CIC makes to, 1,500 women per year, unique service users, and they're filling a gap. This used to be available 12 years ago, and now, gradually these services have declined. So National Lottery funding, one person's vision for this organisation, seeing the need in their community, and we've helped them secure more money because we've been able to independently evaluate their services and show the difference that they are making to women, to family, to babies. And, that is so rewarding. I can give them a report, like we do our quarterly reports, give them a report within 2 weeks. They have restructured or brought something new in to their service offering based on what their service users have been saying that they want, based on what we've been finding out through the evaluation. Not 18 months for paper, not reviewer 2 saying it's not good enough, not 2% chance of getting a funding grant, real difference to people's lives. So it's hugely rewarding. And I just love that kind of work. And, we can scale that up to our bigger clients, again, where they might have a bigger budget and we might be talking about thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people who use their services. But again, it's knowing that they're in that line of work to make a difference and to try to make people's lives better. And they know that that's how we can support them and that we are committed to that too.
I can imagine organizations that I've worked with and just how valuable having that kind of information would be. And as you say, small, agile organizations that can take that feedback and do something with it. It's not like, a big, huge behemoth like a university where it's like, yeah, we might do something in 5 years' time based on this thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And given that making a difference is what you were in it for from the beginning, that it seems like you've found a place where you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is really rewarding. And I think the kind of flip side, how the business has shifted over time is quite interesting, because I think where my kind of original personal network was academia. So increasingly we've got university clients, we're working with academics around research impact, knowledge exchange, and that's been really interesting too, to think about how I can bring in the knowledge from business and charity sector back into academia and working with academics and thinking about, okay, if you want to develop a partnership with an organisation, what is the best way of doing that? And sometimes that is about translating. That is about thinking, what are their priorities? What are your priorities? What do you need to show for ref? What are they interested in terms of the skills and knowledge that you can bring into their organisation? So we've kind of developed into a bit of a brokering organisation as well, which is really interesting, as well as just supporting academics and helping them think about their strategic research plans. Because if you want to have an impact, it's never too early to think about it. How are you going to demonstrate that impact? It's great having loads of impact data. What does it actually show? So it's having those kind of strategic conversations, but bringing in that knowledge that I've gained in the last 5 years of working in a different sector, which has kind of developed the business in a direction that I wasn't anticipating back in 2019.
No, really interesting. And I can imagine that sort of stuff you're talking about, there being huge demand for that kind of service.
Yeah, which brings us back to trying to get a balance and have a business that fits in with everything else, rather than a business that leads the way. I don't have a vision to have this huge business that's employing lots of people. That's not what I'm in it for. That's not what I'm interested in. I love supporting people. I love supporting organizations. And for me, growth is not everything. It's being able to do a really good job for the clients that we have, and have clients that come to us because they know that we care as much as they do about what they're doing. And I think sometimes, they're business conferences and business materials, and it's often about growth. It's often about, income. And I think at the moment, for me as a business leader, it's about deciding where the business is going to go. And that's, 5 years ago, did I think I would be in this position of having to think, actually, I don't want to grow, or I don't want to grow in that direction? No. So it is incredible. That's what, back to step by step, you never quite know what might come down if you take the leap, what comes down the road. But equally, what's so lovely about running your own business is that you're in charge. And in academia, it never felt like that, because you're never good enough. The next thing is never enough. It's always the next thing. And someone else changes the goalpost. The promotion criteria is this, or the grant criteria is this, and then suddenly it changes. Or you've got yet another computer system to get your head around right at the start of term when you're busy trying to prepare your lectures. There's always all these external changes coming at you when you're already maxed out with a very heavy workload often. So what's really lovely is thinking, actually, I don't have to listen to advice from anybody else. I can make decisions my way and what suits me. And that's really, really refreshing if you've been in a system that has, over time felt quite oppressive.
I think you've certainly highlighted a lot of challenges that you've had along the way, whether that's been, with academia and your decisions to move over, and then also just the challenges of launching and growing a new business. Are there any particular things that stand out in your mind as being a particular hurdle that had to be overcome?
I think actually it's probably when I was in academia, I felt like I had to do it all and know it all. And that's the same in business. I feel like you have to do it all and you have to know it all, but you don't. So remembering that you have skills to find new things out as and when, you don't have to know it all to start. And also delegate. I mean, I really struggled with delegation when I was setting up the business. But actually, I don't need to know how to do everything. I need to know what I need to do or what the business needs, but I don't need to be the one who does the delivery on everything, because then you just enter into burnout territory. And I think now back in when I was in academia, it's like, why did I think that I had to do everything? And why was it always to other people's timescales? It's like, you don't have to do everything. There are ways of delegating, even in academia. Like, there's people specializing as VAs for academics now. There are ways of delegating. There are ways of perhaps thinking about how you could work as a team, even though academia's often quite isolating. But just thinking creatively about how you could create a more manageable workload, or how you could push some things into the long grass because it's someone else's priority and not yours. And actually, the people who kind of seem to get higher and higher up the academic system are very good at saying no, or not yet, not right now. That has implications for the rest of us. If academia works for somebody, that's amazing, but often it's good to reflect on who is it not working for and think about why. And I think that's a real responsibility of university leaders, actually, especially at the moment when we've got all this talk about ref and what's happening and research culture. Who is the system not working for? You need to hear those voices. And the same in business. I didn't delegate. I didn't kind of bring on support as quickly as I should have done. Because I had that mindset of, I need to know how to do it. I need to do it. I need to do it. And actually, it is just the road to burnout, whether you're in academia or whether you're doing research elsewhere.
That is very valuable and important advice for myself as much as for anybody else.
It's not just me.
I think we're all at it. So, as with all of my guests in the podcast, I do like to ask, if you had a magic wand and you could change something about the world that you work in, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Wow, just one magic wand or just one
wave? It is a magic wand, so it can do a lot. But
yeah, I think one wave of magic wand could achieve a lot. I think what would be so amazing is to think that the work that our clients are doing was actually properly funded. I mean, so if we think about it from what we do and what we put out into the world point of view, because I was having this discussion with some people the other day, and not to just enter into complete political realm, but when I look around at who we serve and think, what has actually improved in that area since 2010? And I really struggle to think of what might have improved. There's so many cutbacks. We've got so many crises in so many areas, and you've got people in communities working incredibly hard, running charities and social enterprises, trying to plug the gaps from statutory service withdrawal, and it's incredibly difficult. So if I had a magic wand in terms of my clients, it would be that we would have some properly funded services so that people could feel hopeful again. because there's such despair, and it's really, really sad. And we've got, a whole generation now affected by COVID, mental health crisis, social media crisis. We've got so many crises in so many areas, and I just think it's not being talked about enough. People are suffering and feeling as though there isn't hope. So my magic wand would be a magic wand of hope, actually, for society, because I just think there's not enough discussion around these services that have just disappeared. And in some areas, there's just nothing. There's nothing for families. There's nothing for young people. There's nothing if you're experiencing a mental health crisis. And I just think this is 21st century UK, sixth richest country. So my magic is all in that direction of trying to make society happier, better for people.
Yeah. Oh, well, that sounds like an absolutely excellent use of the magic wand. If only exactly. We could. It was
very idealistic, but I wouldn't want to waste my wave on anything.
Don't waste your yeah, exactly. Don't waste that wave. Well, thank you so much, Naomi, for coming along and having a chat. It's been so lovely to hear about what you do. If people want to find out more about the work that you do, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Really lovely to be on the podcast. Thank you. And so I run the Facebook group that I mentioned, Old Tech Careers. There's lots of free support and advice in there for researchers who might still be in academia, left academia, research adjacent roles, professional services, whatever terms we use. So lots of us in there sharing experiences, job opportunities, etc. And the company website is researchyourway.com. And on LinkedIn, I am Naomi Tyrrell, PhD. So very happy to connect with new people, signpost you to support and advice, or if you're thinking of moving into the evaluation and social research space, very happy to have chats as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to Research Adjacent. If you're listening in a podcast app, please check you're subscribed and then use the links under the episode to find full show notes and to follow the podcast on LinkedIn, Twitter or Instagram. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to the Research Adjacent Roundup newsletter. You can also find all the links and other episodes at www.researchadjacent.com. Research Adjacent is presented and produced by Sarah McCluskey, and you, yes you, get a big gold star for listening right to the end. See you next time.